Now, this illustration deals when conductors and conduits and so forth are considered outside the building, in accordance with the rules of 230.6. Now, for example, reviewing the left hand side of this drawing, we see the meter base. And we've already talked about 90.2, B as in boy 5, and 230.66, and exactly what those sections state. But notice the conduits are routed on the outside of the building, even on the roof area. They're on the outside of the building, and they do not enter the building till they emerge from the roof. And if they run a good distance, if we encase them with 2 inches of concrete, as you see from the roof area, then they're still considered outside the building if they're encased in 2 inches of concrete or brick. Now, notice if we have a chase, as you see, the conduit coming out of the meter base and routed in the chase, then with 2 inches of concrete provided or more, then we're considered. And notice that chase has concrete 12 inches thick. So we're considered a chase considered outside the building. But notice when we enter that building, if we have a great distance to travel, then we'd have to encase it with 2 inches of concrete, 2 inches of brick, or use a cable that would have, say, a 2-hour rating or whatever the authority having jurisdiction would say we would have to enter into that building at a greater distance. Now, in the city of Fort Worth, just for an example now, at the time when I was the chief, we'd let you route 25 foot inside the building in rigid metal conduit, or IMC, without having to encase in concrete. Over in Dallas, say, you could route any distance you wanted to go as long as using rigid conduit, IMC. So every city had a little bit of different rule here, so it was a lot easier to comply with that entry rule when you enter into the building. Now, notice that the mains that you see in the equipment cannot be more than 6 foot 7 inches to the handle of the overcurrent device in the on position. Then notice individual breakers going out would comply with 110.22 for appliances such as air conditioners and things like that. Then notice if we had a sub panel going out, 408.30 and 36, and the informational note would address that the main in the service equipment would be the main for the protection of the conductors in the panel, sub-panel. In other words, we wouldn't need a main at the sub-panel. Working clearances, as we've already been through, if you've been reviewing the Chapter 5, and Table 110.26A1, Section 110.26A1 and 2, as well as 3, along with the dedicated clearances 110.26, we've already reviewed E. So we've reviewed that information. Then notice the concrete slab is 6 inches, and you're under that 6-inch slab, so you're considered outside the building until you emerge from the floor and the concrete slab to route to the service equipment. And usually the authority having jurisdiction, if there's not a rule to let you enter further, they usually won't allow more than 6 foot 7 inches to the height of the main, which is required in 408.8A. So reviewing the 230.6, also review your table 300.5. Now, reviewing these sections that we've called out to you, notice the underground lateral in 230.32 belongs to the utility, and it's called an underground lateral. But if those conductors belong to the owner, it would be service conductors by definition of such in Article 100. So every section that you see in this illustration should be reviewed. Notice in the figure loop To the right-hand side of the drawing, it talks for the maximum height of the disconnecting means to actually see the different disconnects. You would see figure 6-42 of this chapter, and also review very carefully 230.6 items 1 through item 6, because you would know exactly when conductors are considered outside the building and in what type of installation would they be considered outside the building due to the construction and layout of the building. But figure 6-8 just talks about conductors considered outside the building in accordance with NEC 230.6.